So it's been over a year since Joel started building Oasis, which is a pair of glasses that help you create your space and focus anywhere, basically. Today we're going to share some of that story and how far we've come. And I think there's no better way of doing it than just looking at our doc with over 80 pages of thoughts and notes. And yeah, let's go. So let's rewind to week one. You spent the last year in uni developing Oasis, and October last year you dropped me a text that we're starting a startup, and now we are the focus company. So first, what is Oasis?
Yeah, so Oasis is a pair of smart glasses that dim your surroundings to help you focus.
And what led you to this idea for creating a space?
Yeah, so I myself have ADHD, and I noticed that in certain environments that it would affect my focus, basically, particularly in environments with a lot of lighting or a lot of movement, a lot of things going on. I just wouldn't have the right space to kind of enter a state of flow. And I kind of wanted to create a space for myself without secluding myself in that environment. So still being part of that environment while still also having my own space.
And what was one example of a place where it was particularly bad?
Yeah, so particularly in like offices, studios, even like library spaces, like just to kind of open plan spaces where there's, a lot going on or just a lot of things to look at or around me. I would just need like the right space to reflect my mind as well. So if my mind needed to be very focused and my space needed to be very focused.
Makes sense. Yeah. And so I don't have ADHD, but I think there's a lot of overlaps. So a lot of symptoms might seem similar, but what's ADHD really like for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess the best way I can describe it is it's almost like you're running with like weights on your back. So it almost feels like there's always something holding you back. But then at other times it can feel like you're being propelled forward, like too much. So you're always like either running too fast or, running like against the wind, but you're never like running at the pace that like life wants you to be running at.
Okay.
So that's kind of how it feels. Yeah.
Yeah. So after this, Joel won the James Dyson Award, and that kind of gave you the boost to start a focus company. And why do you think what we're building is important?
Yeah, I think, looking at the world now, there's so much technology out there that is being used to take our attention away all the time. Like technology is no longer serving us as a tool. It's kind of, being used to kind of take our attention away. And it's kind of affecting a lot of people. And I think it's really important that we use technology for good. And that's kind of what we want to do here at the Focus Company. It's actually use technology to win your attention back rather than taking it away all the time.
Yeah. So while everyone else is putting a screen on your face, we want you to be here.
Yeah.
So fast forward to week 12, I think it's like December. We were applying for YC at the time. It was kind of the most obvious thing to do. I think you've read our application earlier. So What's the biggest takeaway since then?
Yeah, I remember I was applying for this. And yeah, you're right. It kind of seemed like the most obvious thing to do at the time because it was like, oh, we're a startup. Let's apply for Y Combinator. That's what startups do. And yeah, we spent a long time on the application. And I think I remember something I said is that like, even if we don't get in, like just doing the application alone would be useful. But looking at it now, like I can see just how early days we were, and we just didn't really understand how investment work, how startups work, and it can kind of show in our answers as well. They're like very long, and like investors don't read things. So you just like, I feel like the longer your answer to something, and like the longer your answer to a question, it's like the less you probably know like how to answer it. So yeah, there's a lot in here, and it's very like centered on the product rather than the business. And I think that's kind of the main thing now. It's, we're not at that time we were just so product centric. But now, we've actually kind of, thought about the business, and that was one of the first things I was asked, in the early days by one of our mentors. It was like, what kind of business are you? I didn't really understand the question at the time. But yeah, it's definitely made a lot more sense as we have progressed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because we weren't really thinking whether YC matches who we are.
Yeah.
And, YC doesn't really have a lot of hardware consumer startups. Maybe they will soon because of AI and whatnot. So did we get YC in the end, or
no?
That's why we're here. Not in San Francisco. We're in Cork.
It's a lot better, to be honest.
Do you love Cork?
Yeah, of course. How could you not?
But yeah, I don't think we expected to get YC, and you can kind of see it in our notes, and Oasis 24 as well, that like we had plans.
We were doing so well.
So,
hello, is this Digital Marketing HQ?
Yes, sir.
yeah, you're speaking to customer service.
Yeah, I have a promotional ad I'd like to film, and I'm looking for a quote.
Sure.
It's for the new snack bar. We're introducing a gold snack bar.
Does it have AI?
Does it have what?
AI?
Does the snack bar have AI?
Yeah.
No, it's a fucking chocolate bar.
I'm sorry, we're not interested.
So anyway, we got rejected.
Yeah. But it wasn't the end of the world. Like, we kind of knew that, YC was a bit of a stretch for us. And we didn't put all of our eggs in one basket. We kind of had, we were kind of tapping into the Irish ecosystem at the same time, which we were just beginning to get familiar with as well. So I got a place on the NDRC pre-accelerator. So basically I was, working full time, and then in the evenings I'd be kind of working on the pre-accelerator. And this was kind of just a way for me to even learn whether I was a good fit for a startup and for the kind of business that we wanted to do. And yeah, that's kind of how I learned about startups initially. And then I applied for Enterprise Ireland's New Frontiers program. And I was lucky enough to get a place on that. And it just really came down to the decision whether I wanted to leave my job to go full time into the New Frontiers incubator. And it was a tough decision because I did quite like my job. But yeah, I was very motivated to pursue this and bring this product further. So yeah, I left my job in December, and yeah, it's been a lot of progress since then.
Okay, so now we're in March, and a few months ago we met a New York VC, and one of the things she said was, how scrappy can you get? So what do we do?
Yeah, I think that was a question that hit us a lot, because prior to that, so, we're on New Frontiers program, and we're kind of learning about business, we're learning about all, investment and all of these things. And the dilemma we had was, to get investment, we needed to show more commercial traction. But how can we show commercial traction without the product being ready yet? And to build a product, we also need funding. So we were kind of in this chicken egg situation. So when she asked us that, it was like, okay, how can we scale it back and prove that this is a product that people wanted? And even if it's in a very early MVP stage. And so we decided to kind of come up with this 3D print that we could send out to people that could demonstrate the core effect without the technology. And that's how we developed Oasis Explorer. And yeah.
Yeah, and I think that was really an even bigger confidence boost for us, because again, it didn't only prove that, this was something that people were saying that they want, but they're willing to spend money on it, which is, I think, a huge difference. And then also it led us to the reservation campaign, which now also includes a prototype, because I think it's also a huge trust building factor, and it helps us help people to determine, like, is it useful for them, because they get to experience the core feature without having to, get the fancy version that we're building.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, like, at the same time, we're also able to get direct customer feedback from those prototypes that can then influence how we develop the final product. So it's not just like we get to the final product and then we get feedback. We're getting feedback continuously. And that's been a really useful thing for the 3D print as well.
And how has some of that prototype changed since then?
Yeah, so the first prototypes we put out there, like, the ergonomics was quite limited. We were using like 3D print material. There was only so much we could even do, especially because it's eyewear, and the eyewear needs like pretty good ergonomics. So, when we send it out to people, people mentioned kind of sizing challenges. And so we took all that feedback in and have been improving them, making them more ergonomic. But we also got a lot of great feedback, just like people finding it so useful, relaxing, calming in different environments, different situations for different people as well. And yeah, it was great confidence booster again for us. Just getting a super early prototype out there and people found it useful.
Yeah. And so we're experimenting now with the hinge and the nose pieces.
Yeah, just a lot of the ergonomics, just iterating on it and changing stuff. And that's also the benefit of 3D printing. We can prototype very quickly. So yeah, that's kind of what we're working on now, as well as a technical prototype and the technology and everything.
So now it's summertime, and after Explore, we were back in funding mode, and we were a bit indecisive.
Yeah. So this is when we were kind of really tested about what kind of business we were, because if we didn't know what kind of business we were, we'd kind of be chasing funding routes that weren't aligned with what we should be doing. And that was kind of the problem. I remember, in the Oasis 24 notes, I wrote out this whole section about 3 different plans that we would do, and I kind of codenamed them. I think it was like tortoise, cheetah, and hare or something, based on how like quickly we could go. Basically, the faster we could go, the more funding we'd need to raise. And so we kind of had this dilemma of, should we raise as little as possible and move at a slow pace, or should we raise just as much as we can and, just blitz through it, basically. And we'd be kind of getting different pieces of advice. And it was really tough to kind of just be like, this is what we should do. And we just really couldn't decide. And so we ended up just almost chasing all the plans simultaneously. And that kind of really made that summer difficult.
Yeah. Just switching all the time.
Yeah. And I think we kind of knew what we wanted to do, It
was like a FOMO. Of sorts.
We were like, should we be doing this? Even though but it made summer quite difficult because we were running out of funding as well, from like the incubator program. So, we were kind of chasing anything we could get, and that wasn't the best.
No. So then we got caught up in AI, and at the time it seemed like every product that was popping up every startup had AI at the end of its name. And then the consumer products came in with Humane Pin, the Rabbit R1, and then that led us to have our own little stint of exploring how we could use AI within Oasis.
Yeah. So we'd been thinking about like different software features for a long time. But we started thinking more about AI and how we could integrate it. And, we were juggling between funding, and now we're kind of talking about new features as well. And I remember, I think I wrote like a 5-page like document, just like trying to like clarify my thoughts and like figure things out. And yeah, it was really tricky. But the funny thing is, like, once we even started mentioning that we're exploring AI, like, we got more investor interest, which was pretty crazy. But yeah, we kind of had to really ask ourselves again, like, what are we doing? Why are we doing it? Who are we doing it for? And like, kind of be more strategic with how we're looking at software integration. So it's not just shoehorned in, but it actually feels like right, and at the right time as well. So yeah, that's kind of what we did. We kind of scaled it back, and we were just like, what do we need to do right now? What's the core feature? And that came from a lot of her reading of like, I remember we read Build by Tony Fadell, and I shared that book with you. Yeah, really good book where he talks about Nest and the product development cycles and how you can iterate with different versions over time, keep things simple. And that really kind of inspired us to, scale things back and be more strategic with our rollout of features, essentially.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think I remember one of the questions I had in that doc was like, are we a focus company or are we an AI company? And it was kind of like, prioritizing our mission before the technology, essentially.
Yeah. So what's next?
Yeah. So what is next?
I don't know. I was just messing with you. So what's next? We've updated our site and you can reserve Oasis now, which will come with a prototype in February. And yeah, we need to bring people there now. So we're probably going to start running ads soon. We do have the budget, right? We did secure funding that summer. Okay. So goofy. Oh man, how many people do this?